Assalamu alaikum everyone, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Handy Hijabies. One of the things that I love to do is take a lot of old things and make them new again. What I'm going to show you today is a little project that I've started, and this project is refinishing basically some side tables that I actually purchased at a second-hand store. These tables have been sitting around for quite a little while, and now I've just decided to get the momentum to try and start this refinishing project. So what we're going to do today is take off the old finish from the tables and then see what's underneath the tables. Sometimes if it's too damaged, if the wood or the project that I'm about to embark on is a bit too damaged, I will usually paint it over, sand it down, fix all the little blemishes, sand it down, and then paint the piece of furniture. These tables had a little bit of damage, so I'm going to look to see if we can actually salvage the actual piece without having to paint it. And hopefully we can just remove the finish and reveal the wood that's underneath. Without further ado, I want to show you the project that we will be doing today. So what you're going to need first, obviously, is your table. This is the table that we're going to be refinishing. The elegance of this table and the classiness of this table caught my eye. The one thing that I didn't like was the actual chocolate color to it. I'm not sure if it's actually a stain or if it's actually a light paint. I'm not sure exactly what the finish is on it right now. I've already started to strip down the wood, the finish, so you can see kind of the wood stripper on there as well. But I think that if we were to remove this finish, reveal some of the wood grain, and then refinish it with a light stain and then some varnish over top, I think would bring this table back to life and back to its original elegance. So there's just a few things that you're going to need for this project. The first thing that you're going to need is your table. The second thing you're going to need is your furniture stripper. So I use the Bio Options Heirloom Furniture Stripper. It's a more natural furniture stripper, if there's anything, if that's an oxymoron, I'm not sure. But anyways, this is a really good product to use, especially when if you're like me and you like to do a lot of your projects inside the house, especially in the winter time. This is a good one to use because it doesn't have a chemical smell. It's not messy either. That's the other thing. It's not messy, and you don't have to worry about like toxic fumes. So that's the first one. And the way that you apply it is with a paintbrush. So an old paintbrush, whatever one's laying around. The good thing about this bio stripper is it actually washes out with water. You don't even need like chemical solvents to actually clean your brush or clean your hands or what have you. It's really just soap and water cleanup, which is great. After your furniture stripper has sat on your project for a while, especially if you have a nice flat surface like the tops of this table, you're going to need a scraper. This scraper is just a regular scraper that you buy at a regular hardware store, and it's great for doing like flat surfaces. So not so great if you have these little grooves in here, but the scraper is excellent for using those big surface areas. The next thing that you're going to need is some steel wool. So I use the 00 steel wool. The reason I do that is because it's not too coarse and it's not too fine. So it's right in between, kind of like Goldilocks. The coarse one, if you use too much of a coarse steel wool, it'll actually dig into your wood, especially if your wood is a softer wood, and sometimes you don't even know that until you actually take off the original finish on your wood. So just any kind of steel wool, get the 00 or the 0 grade steel wool, perfect for you to use. The other thing that you need, because you're using the furniture stripper, it's a good idea for you to have a barrier between your hand and the furniture stripper. But it's always nice because your hands can get quite messy and goopy, especially when you put on the furniture stripper. It goes on kind of like more liquidy, but it comes off really like gooey. So you really don't want that on your hands. You don't want to have to get into that habit of having all that goop on your hands. So I would recommend that you use a pair of gloves. I don't have gloves, so you're going to be laughing at me because I'm going to be using a Ziploc bag. So that's my my MacGyvering skills there, and that's what I'll be using as my barrier. Okay, so my hands don't get too goopy, and it works well. It's a lot easier if you have a glove, but if you don't have them, because I can't find mine, but if you don't have it, just use some kind of plastic barrier. The other thing that you also need, and you can see it underneath my table, is some newspaper. Because when you're taking off, especially when you're using the scraper, it really pushes the furniture stripper around. So it kind of can leak off the top of and kind of drip down the side of your project. So make sure that you're protecting your floor quite well. This is as far as I've come with the stripping of the furniture. And then I've scraped off most of the finish on the top. And then just to get the little bits and pieces off, like right here, like right there and here, and even over there. See how there's a little bit more finish there? That still needs to come off. This is where the steel wool will come into play. The other thing that the steel wool is good for is these edges. It's really good for getting into the grooves, these little tiny grooves here, and stripping off the finish on those as well. And again, you don't need the gloves to actually apply the furniture stripper on. So basically all I'm going to do is going to pour a little bit on. You really don't need a lot. You just want to make sure that there is enough to cover the surface so that it can penetrate enough into the finish. If you find it easier to apply the furniture stripper using a container, you can pour some of the furniture stripper into a glass container or a plastic container, and then you can dip the brush in and then apply it that way. Whatever's easier for you. And you have to let it sit for a little while just to allow it to start bubbling up and penetrate enough of the finish so that you can just scrape most of it off. So paste it on and make sure it's thick enough so that it won't dry out too fast, but you don't want it too thick where you're wasting it. It says here in the instructions that the surface stripping time may vary depending on how much you apply, but you are supposed to put a generous amount. I have. So we'll wait until we start to see the finish bubble a little bit, and then we'll take our scraper and our steel wool and remove the finish from the areas that we've just applied the furniture stripper to. Now it's time to scrape off the finish. See how goopy it is? So now we're going to use the steel wool, and we're going to try and attempt to get into these grooves to remove the finish in here. And if your steel wool gets too saturated with the stuff, the furniture stripper, you just get another piece of steel wool. You don't really want to scrape too much. Let the furniture stripper do its job. The reason I'm saying that is because if you use a scraper and too much elbow grease to remove the stain, you are going to end up gouging the wood, and that'll defeat the whole purpose of refinishing and taking off the finish to begin with. So really avoid scraping too much. Really what should happen is the furniture stripper should be doing its job. Yeah, see, this is coming off nicely now. Like I said, just sometimes a couple of coats is all you need. And this stuff works amazing. Non-toxic, and it's very effective. I actually really like the grain of this, of the table. As you can see, the wood is getting exposed, and it looks amazing. So once it's cleaned up, we'll see what we're going to do with it. So as you're trying to strip off the rest of the finish, you're basically, it's a bit wobbly, going to be rubbing the spots that need that extra finish removed. The stuff that the scraper couldn't get off. See? It works wonders to try and get that little remaining finish off. And always when you're using the steel wool or sanding, try and follow the grain of the wood. If it was running this way, then I'd be going this way. I'm just going to use the scraper here. And make sure you're not digging into the furniture with the scraper. It has to be really horizontal, or else you're going to ruin the actual wood. I'm going to grab a new thing of steel wool, and we're going to run over this another time to get those extra little bits off. And I'm going to do the edges.
Applying a wood conditioner helps to ensure that when you're applying the stain, it's absorbed into the wood evenly. I use the Minwax Penetrating Wood Stain in Dark Walnut.
This will be applied with a cloth using gloves so I don't stain my hands. And the reason I'm choosing a darker stain is because the wood itself is already a bit darker. We're never going to get it down to its bare, raw, completely raw virgin wood. Because it's been stained before, there is a little bit of color to it. So we're just going to stain it with a darker stain so that we can see the wood grain, but also have a nice rich color as well.
You can apply the stain using a brush, but I like to use a cloth to apply the stain.